Welcome back to the Next Level You podcast, where we help you build the bridge between your now and your next through deep conversations, personal stories, and practical frameworks you can apply to real life. I am your host, Mayaria Johnson, joined by my co-host, co-visionary, and mother, Dr. Miriam Johnson.
Hello, and thank you for choosing us. We're excited to have you here with us. Today, we will continue our A to Z series on personal and professional growth by diving into the letter C.
C is for confidence. In part 1 of this series, we explore how to discover your voice, wield it with courage, and cultivate the kind of confidence that is grounded in truth and not a subpar performance. Now, if you tuned in for the letter B, you know we talked all about belonging, starting with what it means to belong to yourself. And this episode, it picks up right where we left off. Because confidence is what blossoms when you stop abandoning yourself and start honoring who you are, even when the room tries to convince you otherwise.
Yes, confidence is what happens when you stop shrinking to fit in and start standing in your story. It's less about always being loud or bold and more about being grounded, even in uncertainty. It's the muscle you build every time you speak up for yourself, take a risk on your own growth, or decide to stop waiting for permission. And if confidence feels out of reach right now, whether you're at work, in friendships, or even when you're trying to make major decisions, you're not alone. Confidence is a skill, and it grows through patience, practice, reflection, and lots of self-compassion.
Let's jump in and revisit the anchor scenario that began in B is for belonging, starting a new job. Whether you are fresh out of college or stepping into a new leadership role, you are entering a space where you are learning about the people, culture, and expectations. But on top of that learning curve, you look around and realize something deeper. You are the first, or the only. The first to graduate from college in your family. The first in your family to attend trade school instead of college. The first in your family to choose another religion or church affiliation other than the one you grew up with. The first in your family to choose an alternative relationship or lifestyle.
The only woman or man on your team or in your workplace. The only person of color on your team or in your workplace. The only introvert in a room full of extroverts. The only person who did not go to an Ivy League school or to an HBCU. The only person who still lives in your hometown. The only person who didn't grow up with certain privileges.
And sometimes the thing that makes you feel like the only is not just your identity, it's your curiosity. You may be the first in your circle to learn something like AI or data and analytics, which can make you feel exposed. You don't know all the answers. You haven't done it before. You're afraid of looking like a beginner, of not being taken seriously, or of failing publicly. But here's what I've learned. Confidence isn't about being fearless. It's about being willing to try, even if you're unsure. It's choosing to explore the unknown anyway. That uncertainty of stepping into something new or being the first can be just as isolating as any identity-based difference. And it's in those moments, especially, that confidence has to come from within.
Exactly. Whether it's your upbringing, your beliefs, or even the path that brought you into the room. Whatever makes you feel different can be disorienting, and confidence does not always come naturally in those moments.
That is when your sense of self-belonging, which we discussed in part 1 of B is for belonging, becomes your foundation. Because if you haven't laid a solid foundation of self-worth before walking into that room, the silence, the stares, or even the subtle dismissals can convince you that you don't deserve to be there.
Confidence in these moments is choosing to speak, even if you're nervous. It's sitting at the table, even when no one invites you. It's saying, I'm not here to prove I belong. I am here because I do belong.
And let's consider this. Confidence appears differently in various settings. At school, it might mean raising your hand to challenge a point or sharing a project you are proud of. At work, it could mean sharing a new idea, escalating an issue to leadership, or asking for the support you need. Confidence is also not settling, not shrinking your expectations, not staying silent when something hurts, and not playing small just because the space is not used to people like you taking up room.
Confidence aligns with one of my favorite learning theories. It was developed by Jack Mazzaro and is known as the transformational learning theory. The theory, also referred to as transformative learning, explains how people understand their life experiences by thinking about their own beliefs and assumptions. For example, confidence is telling someone, that hurt me, without fear of how they might respond. It's speaking your truth and letting the chips fall where they may. And that kind of courage, it's not loud, it's not flashy, but it is transformational.
So here is a reflection to sit with. Where have I been holding back? Not because I lack skill or talent, but because I didn't feel safe or seen. And what might change if I remembered that belonging to myself is my first assignment, and confidence is the expression of that inner belonging. Not all confidence is loud. Some of the most courageous acts of confidence are quiet, subtle, and deeply personal. Confidence is not dimming your light to make others comfortable. It is not settling for a half version of your voice, your values, or your vision.
It's continuing to be yourself, even when it would be easier to conform. And sometimes that looks like sticking to your communication style, even when others do not understand it.
Yes, that really resonates with me. I've always been someone who processes the world through words. Long emails, reflective journaling, thoughtful social posts. That's how I think. It's how I connect. It's how I lead. And yet, there have been moments when I started to question whether that was too much. Not because someone said it directly, but because people would ask questions I had already answered. Or they'd schedule meetings to discuss things I had already explained in detail via email. Over time, I realized they hadn't read what I wrote, or maybe they didn't want to. You know the acronym TLDR? Too long, didn't read? Sometimes it felt like that was silently stamped on everything I shared.
And that starts to make you second guess yourself, right?
It does. I began to wonder, should I stop sharing so much? Would I be taken more seriously if I said less? But here's what I've come to believe. My voice has value because of its depth, not in spite of it. And confidence for me has meant continuing to express myself fully, even if it doesn't land with everyone, even if it feels like I'm writing for the few who do engage.
That's a good point. Confidence is not about forcing people to accept you. It's about refusing to abandon yourself in the hope that they will accept you. Confidence is saying, this is who I am, even when it's tempting to shrink, even when you're met with the silence from others or given the side eye.
I'll share another quiet moment of confidence from my own journey, one that taught me a lot about what it means to believe in yourself even after failure. There was a time when I was preparing for an industry certification exam. I took it and failed, not once, but twice. And I remember thinking, maybe I'm not cut out for this. I saw others pass. I saw them move forward. Meanwhile, I started questioning everything. But here's what I learned. Confidence doesn't only live in achievement. It shows up in the decision to try again. So I studied again, this time with less pressure, more patience, and a healthier mindset. I gave myself permission to grow without tying my worth to the result. And when I finally passed, it wasn't just a line on my resume. It was a personal milestone, a quiet win. Because in that moment, I didn't just pass a test, I reclaimed my belief in my ability to grow.
That is so powerful. Many people give up after failure, not because they lack ability, but because they lose faith in themselves. Rebuilding that belief is confidence, especially when no one's cheering you on and when you're the only one who knows how much it took to try again. It's true it worked too. One of the most confident decisions I made was continuing to apply for jobs that I knew I was qualified for, even after being rejected multiple times. I had moments where I thought, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. That's the imposter phenomenon showing up. But I kept going. I kept advocating for myself because deep down, I knew what I brought to the table. And that quiet persistence, that's confidence too.
Confidence also means speaking up when it would be easier to stay silent. In B is for belonging, we discussed how self-belonging means honoring your truth, even when your voice trembles. And one of the most powerful ways we do that is by using our voice. One of my most defining confidence moments happened at work too, when I chose to escalate risks and issues to leadership. Early in my career, I felt pressure to handle everything myself, silently. I didn't want to come across as someone who complains or can't manage. But I realized that trying to carry it all alone wasn't sustainable or strategic. Speaking up didn't mean I was weak. It meant I was taking ownership. That same confidence showed up again when I started advocating for my growth. Whether it was asking for a new assignment, expressing interest in a promotion, or negotiating my salary, I had to push past that voice that said, what if they think I'm asking for too much? But here's what I learned. If I don't speak up for myself, I can't expect others to just know what I need. Confidence meant naming my aspirations, not hoping someone would notice them on their own. And the more I used my voice about what I needed, wanted, and deserved, the more I understood that confidence isn't arrogance. It's alignment. It's showing up like your goals matter, because they do.
That's such an important reminder. That kind of self-advocacy, that confident self-leadership, is a reflection of deep self-worth. When you believe you belong in the room, you act like your voice carries weight, because it does. And when you belong to yourself, you don't have to wait for permission to speak. You give that permission to yourself.
All right, now it's time to bring this all inward with our next check-in. If this is your first episode with us, this is a practice we've built into every conversation to help you not just listen, but live out the lessons we explore.
Next stands for Notice, evaluate, experiment, and track. Think of it as a self-reflection sprint, a way to slow down, get honest with yourself, and take small steps towards growth.
So let's walk through a next check-in focused on confidence, especially if you've ever been the only or the first in a room, if you've felt unseen, unheard, or unsure about whether your voice matters, or if you've wrestled with the tension between showing up fully and playing it safe. Notice what's happening around you and inside of you when your confidence begins to shrink. Are you second guessing every word before you speak? Staying silent in meetings even when you have something to contribute? Dimming your excitement because you're worried you'll be perceived as too much? Or replaying one comment or piece of feedback until it chips away at your self-trust?
Notice those subtle signals. Maybe it's when someone interrupts you and you go quiet, or when you compare yourself online and suddenly feel behind. Don't judge it, just notice it. Awareness is where confidence begins.
Evaluate. Now ask yourself, what is underneath that response? Is it fear of being misunderstood or dismissed? A need to be liked or accepted? A past experience that made boldness feel unsafe? Maybe you realize you've been staying quiet because you fear being labeled as difficult or too ambitious. Or maybe you play small in certain rooms because you were overlooked before and you're trying to protect yourself from being hurt again. This reflection helps name what's been running in the background so you can begin to shift it.
This is where self-belonging meets self-inquiry. Confidence often requires unlearning the belief that we have to be less in order to be accepted. Experiment. Now, take a small step that stretches your confidence, just one. Speak up in your next meeting. Say thank you instead of brushing off a compliment. Share something you're proud of, even if it feels vulnerable. Ask for clarity, support, or a next step, even if you don't feel 100% ready.
Maybe your experiment is about exploring something new, like enrolling in a course, even when you are a beginner. When I started my undergrad computer science program, I had never coded before. Many of my peers had already taken programming classes. It would have been easy to let that intimidate me, but I stayed grounded in one belief. I may not know it yet, but I can learn. And that's what confidence sounds like on the inside.
And maybe your experiment is reconnecting with your voice, having that honest conversation, asking for what you need. The goal is not perfection, it's progress.
One small step can shift everything because you're not waiting to feel ready. You're getting ready by doing. Track. Now reflect. What shifted after you took that step? Did you feel proud, even if it was scary? Did something open up or feel more aligned? Did it create space for your real self to breathe?
Track your feelings, not just your outcomes. Confidence is not about results. It's about reclaiming your voice, your presence, your place.
And remember, confidence grows through consistency, not perfection. Every time you check in, reflect, and show up with intention, you remind yourself, I do not have to be perfect to be powerful.
So whether your next step feels bold or barely noticeable, take it. Because the more you move in alignment with your truth, the more your confidence begins to rise from within, not from praise or perfection, but from practice.
As we take a breath and close out this conversation, I hope something resonated for you. Whether it was a quiet reminder, a new insight, or just the permission to show up a little fuller this week. Let's bring everything we explored today into one final reflection.
We hope you're walking away with this truth. Confidence is not about a personality trait, it's a practice. It's not something that either you have or you don't have. It's something you build bit by bit as you honor your values, use your voice, and come home to yourself again and again.
And if you're thinking, I'm still figuring this out, that's exactly the point. So are we. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's moving forward despite it. It's saying, even if my voice shakes, I will speak. Even if I've been overlooked, I will apply again. Even if I'm the only one, I still belong here.
Let's bring this full circle. In B is for belonging, we explored the inner foundation that helps you feel grounded and whole. Confidence is what happens when that foundation becomes visible. When what's rooted inside you shows up in how you speak, act, and lead.
So here's your challenge. Pick one way to practice confidence this week. Just one. Maybe it's using your voice. Maybe it's setting a boundary. Maybe it's giving yourself credit for something you usually brush off. Whatever it is, choose truth over fear and notice what shifts.
And remember, progress is built in small, intentional steps. Confidence does not happen all at once. It grows every time you show up with honesty and courage.
If you identified with this episode, we'd love for you to share it with someone who might need a reminder of their power.
And we're not done yet. Next time, we will move on to part 2 and dig even deeper into what it takes to sustain confidence in an ever-changing world.
Until then, this is Mayaria.
And Dr. Miriam.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the Next Level You podcast on platforms such as YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music. Check our show notes for details. And if you want to dive deeper into the concepts we covered in this episode, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn by searching Next Level You. That's NEXTLEVEL and the letter U. Look for our bridge logo, and we'll see you soon.